Introducing functions, lesson 12 notes. The definitions continues. We already talked about a relation, which is a set of ordered pairs. Now we're going to talk about the rest of the definitions here. So let's start with inputs. Inputs are your x-coordinates of a relation. Again, the inputs are the x-coordinates of a relation. In other words, they are the numbers that you plug in. So it is what you plug in. Your outputs are the y-coordinates of a relation. It is what you get. So your input is what you plug in, the output is what you get. The input are your x-coordinates, the output are your y-coordinates. Pause your video and get those written down. Okay, so write down this example. Write down the equation y equals 2x minus 1. We are going to see if the ordered pair 3, 5 is a solution to this equation. Or another way they might ask it is, does that point lie on this line, and so forth. So, which is your x-coordinate and which is your y-coordinate? The 3 would be your x-coordinate, the 5 would be your y-coordinate. So your input is 3. I'm going to replace the x with 3. I'm going to go ahead and do all of that at once. So 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 minus 1 is 5. So the output we got was 5. Our input was 3, our output was 5. If you go up to the first example we did in the review, what was our input? Our input was 22. That's what we plugged in. And what was our output? Our output was negative 49. So input was 22, the output was negative 49. Well, in a relation, these are ordered pairs. So you want to think of it as ordered pairs, and the first number is your x-coordinate, those are your inputs, and the second number is your y-coordinates, which are your outputs. Now I know on your paper, 1, 3, 5, and 14 are bold and bigger than the other number, but I would like you to underline them, and then I'd like you to draw lines like this. So those are your inputs. And for this particular relation, if the input is 1, then your output is 2. If the input is 3, the output is 9. If the input is 5, the output is 8. And then last, if the input was 14, the output was 10. So again, the inputs are your x-coordinates, the outputs are your y-coordinates. You'll hear me say inputs, you'll hear me say x-coordinates, you'll hear me say x values. All the same thing. Okay, so again, inputs are your x-coordinates, outputs are your y-coordinates. Well, in order for a relation to be a function, each input has exactly one output. In order for a relation to be a function, each input has exactly one output. If an input has more than one output, it is not a function. If an input has more than one output, it is not a function. In other words, if an x-coordinate has more than one y value that goes with it, it's not a function. Okay, so when determining if it is function or not a function, the first thing we want to look at are the x-coordinates. Okay, so pause your video and get that written down. So the first thing you want to look at are the x values, or your inputs. So look at the x values first, and you want to see, do they repeat? Okay. Let's take a look at this. All right. Looking at this first group here, my inputs are 1, 2, 3, and 4. What is the output for 1? The output for 1 is 2. The output for 2 is 3. The output for 3 is 4. And the output for 4 is 5. So notice how none of the x values repeated. The x values didn't repeat, therefore this was automatically a function. So this was a function. The x values did not repeat, therefore it was automatically a function, because each input had one output. But if you look at the second column, all right, what are my inputs here? My inputs are actually all the same. The input is a 1. What are the outputs? Well, for the first one, the output is a 2. The second one, the output is a 3. Then the output is a 4. And for the last one, the output is a 5. So for this second column of ordered pairs or relations, okay, the input 1 has 4 outputs. You should just be following along. You don't need to write this down. Just follow along. So the input 1 has 4 outputs. Because it has more than one output, this is not a function. All right, let's look at the next one. Let's look at this. So I've got input 1, then I have 2, then I have 3, and then I have 1 again. Well, for the first one, for the 1, the output is 2. For the 2, the output is 3. For the 3, the output is 4. But for the last one, I go back to 1, and my output is 5. So yes, 2 has one output. 3 has one output. But because the 1 has 2 outputs, that makes this not a function. I'm just going to put NF for now. So because the input 1 has 2 outputs, it's not a function. So once again, you want to see if the x values repeat. When the x values don't repeat, it's automatically a function. Let's look at the last one. I have input values of 1, 2, 3, and then 1 again. The 1 has the output of 2. The 2 has an output of 3. And 3 has an output of 4. Now notice this last one. The last one has an output of 2. So the input 1 has only an output of 2. Even though there's 2 of these, that input has the same output. So if you have repeating x values that have the same output, it will still be a function. If you have repeating x values and they have the same output, it will still be a function. So this is a function. Because the repeating input has the same output, it is still a function. So one more time. The first thing you want to look at are your x values. If your x values don't repeat, it's automatically a function. They didn't repeat here in this first one, automatically a function. If they do repeat, then you have to look at your y values. Here they repeat, the y values were all different, not a function. Here the ones repeat, the y values are different, not a function. Here they repeat, but the y values are the same, so it is still a function. Let's go back to the notes. So for the notes, let's look at these 2 examples. All right, so again, you want to look at your x values first. In this first example right here, look at your x values. Do your x values repeat? I've got 2, 4, 6, and 8. Do they repeat? No, they do not. So because there are no repeating x values, this is automatically a function. Pause your video and get that written down. Again, because there are no repeating x values, it's automatically a function. All right, let's look at the next example. Do I have any repeating x values? I sure do. The x values that repeat are the 3's. So then I need to look at the y values. Here, the y value is a 0, and here, the y value is a 4. Well, that means that the input 3 has two outputs. Input 3 has two outputs. It has an output of 0 and an output of 4. Because input 3 has two different outputs, it's not a function. So pause your video, make sure you have that all written down. All right, if you have any questions on inputs, outputs, or functions, please let me know.